Last gaming console generation was phenomenal and very important for me as well as growing up, because the PS4, the PlayStation 4, was the first console I ever paid for with my own money. But with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X coming out next week, it's time to dive into my favorite PlayStation 4 games of all time. Now, I understand some of you guys might be wondering, what about Xbox Series X? I didn't play enough of their exclusives to say which ones I would like, but I will include which ones were my favorite in my honorable mentions with the other PS4 games that sadly did not make this list. But that's what's going to be great about this, guys, as well. This is my list. It's going to be different than what your list is, so make sure to comment down below and let me know your guys' thoughts. What is your favorite game from this generation? What was your most underrated? Which ones did you love? Which ones do you wish got more love? Let's discuss it all down below in the comment section, as well as hit that like and subscribe. And if you guys love talking video games, movies, TV, all that every single day over here on this channel, so I want to make sure to keep having this conversation with you guys. So hit that like and subscribe button, comment down below. Let's game on and talk about these games. Like I said, I did have an honorable mention, and really when it comes down to, there are two games I in particular did not get to play this generation, but I am promising to play myself once the PS5 comes out, and that is Persona 5 and Detroit Human Revolution. I think that's what it's called. I didn't get to play those two games, but I'm really looking forward to diving into those. I also loved playing Until Dawn, Uncharted Lost Legacy, Last of Us Remaster. I didn't include because it's a remaster, but phenomenal game as well. Ratchet & Clank Remaster, or remake, whatever you want to call that. Order 1886, I thought was actually a pretty underrated game. Not everyone loved it. Way too short, but I actually think that that could have been the next Gears of War, like for the Sony platform. I really like the world and everything. I wish maybe we'll get a sequel one day. And diving in as well as Final Fantasy VII, the remake. I love the game. I thought it was a blast. It was literally this close. It hedged back and forth for which one I wanted to put at my number 10, but sadly it did not make it in. When it does come to Xbox games, though, I do want to give a shout out to Sunset Overdrive, which was a phenomenal game at that. Like, I loved Sunset Overdrive. It's one of my most played games this generation. So giving a shout out to Gears of War 4 and Gears of War 5. Gears of War is my favorite gaming franchise of all time. And while I don't think 4 is even as close to as great as the original trilogy was, I do think 5 kind of got us back there, especially within its story mode. The online has some work to do, and they've definitely changed a lot, and I've appreciated what they've done with it. So it is kind of getting back to that level, but I do want to give a shout out because I really immensely enjoyed the campaign for Gears of War 5. Let's get to my number 10, which my number 10 is Infamous Second Son. This was one of my first games I got for the PlayStation 4 back in the day when the console had debuted. And for me, this is a game that I love the first two. I loved Cole. I loved everything about him, and bringing in new protagonists, I was a little bit worried. But with the PlayStation 4, this was the first game to really outshine and show what this console can do, whether it's with the graphics, the colors, the powers, everything of that nature. This game was eye-popping, and I really enjoyed it. This is one of the first games that, again, I went for that Platinum Trophy. I got that Platinum Trophy, and I put so much time into Infamous Second Son. I actually played this one more than the previous two Infamouses, which is funny because this would be my second favorite Infamous compared to the other ones. Infamous 2 will always be my favorite one, but I love what this game was able to do. I really enjoyed the new character, and I thought a lot of the new additions that they added, whether it's within the powers and the new characters, I thought was completely enjoyable. It's a game that I actually am looking forward to diving back into, maybe when the PS5 comes out, placing it back in and saying, hey, let's see if they got any upgrades for this. But overall, I love Infamous Second Son, and I wanted to make sure it got onto this list. Again, it was between this and Final Fantasy VII. It was kind of hard, but I chose Infamous because I definitely put more time into that, whereas Final Fantasy VII, I beat it, I went through it, I pretty much got 100% of the game, and then I just haven't touched it yet, and I'm really much waiting for Part 2, Part 3, and seeing where that story actually goes. Coming in at my number 9 is going to be a controversial pick. There might be a couple controversial picks on here, depending on who you are, but my number 9 is Death Stranding. This is a game that was one of my most anticipated games for the whole entire console generation, especially when I heard Kojima had announced it. And for me, this is actually an interesting game, and I've wanted to make and have a conversation about this game, which is why I placed it in this list. It didn't make it into honorable mentions because I've wanted to talk about this game for so long, and I feel like it deserves a warranted place in here because Death Stranding for me was a game that I was super psyched about. I bought the collector's edition. I bought every single thing I possibly could for it because I love Kojima, and I want to support him because Metal Gear Solid is one of the best gaming franchises of all time. And, you know, I went into the game, and most notably I said, this is very different, this is very weird, I don't know what to expect, and it definitely is very weird, unique, and different. But what the game was I had a love-hate relationship with this game. I loved the story, I loved the mythology, I loved the characters, I loved the graphics, and in a sense, sometimes I didn't mind the gameplay. But I also sometimes hated the gameplay. I hated how much walking it was, and I hated how long periods and how the pacing was at times for some of the game. But when it came down to it, I bought the game, said I'm going to do a review about it, and I never did. Because I didn't beat the game till probably 2 months ago. The game that came out, I put at least 20 hours in, and then I just dead stopped. And chalk it up to I was busy, work, whatever it was, I stopped playing the game. And that was one of the worst decisions I could have made. Because once you get past Chapter 4 and get into 5, and really much, that's when the story starts picking up heavily. Then 5 to maybe 8, once you get past all of that, again, the story picks up heavily again. And pretty much the back half of the game is all story, which I loved. And for me, that is something that, again, I wanted to really dissect and put myself into, and I love what Kojima was trying to say about this game. Adding on top of that as well, the characters, the mythology, the story, and really what this game is all about. This game makes you take an outlook on humanity was one of my favorite aspects of this. I really do hope we get a sequel or some sort of different place inside the Death Stranding world, because I think it is a unique game, and especially where the game ends off on, it is just phenomenal. Plus the boss battles in here, there's 2 in particular that are absolutely weird, but I loved it, and they're some of my favorite boss encounters of this whole generation. Diving into my number 8 is going to be Days Gone. What a damn surprise this game was. Now let me just say this, and let me really preface this. I didn't expect to like this game, because every time it comes out with a zombie game, I'm just done with it. There are certain zombie things that I will jump back into, like Call of Duty Zombies. I don't know what it is. Nostalgic wise for me and my friends, we love playing it. Last of Us, even when that first game was coming out, I was like, oh, another zombie game? I don't care. Even though I love The Walking Dead, I'm just kind of over it all. Look how that game turned out. Days Gone was looking at it the same way. I said, I got no interest in this. Biker, zombie, whatever. GameStop had a deal going on where if you bought the game and you didn't like it within the span of 3 days, you could return it for full cash back. And I said, okay, that intrigues me, because if I don't like the game, I can just go get my money back. So it was a win-win situation for me. If I like the game, I get a great game to keep. If I don't like the game, I can return it. Picked up the game, took it home, probably put around 8 hours in that first day, and I liked it. I thought a lot of it was kind of simplified. It was okay. I didn't love all the driving mechanics because your bike completely sucks in the beginning. But I kept playing the game. And, you know, got to my 3rd day, and I was around probably 15, 16 hours in at this point. And there was something about the game that finally hooked me. What finally hooked me was a piece of the story. And when I latched onto that piece of the story, I kept going. And then the upgrades came in. My guns got stronger. My bike got better. And killing hordes and hordes of zombies became immensely fun. I had such a blast with Days Gone. In fact, I find this to be the most underrated game on the PS4 as of right now, because not enough people have talked about this game. I believe that people should really dive into this one and give it more of a fair shot. It wasn't reviewed greatly, and in fact, I don't believe that most of these critics actually beat the game, because the game gets so great, especially the end game content becomes fantastic. I find myself just jumping into this game randomly to go kill hordes and hordes of zombies and continue on my upgrade path. I want a sequel to Days Gone, and I definitely want more add-ons to it. I want to keep exploring this world. Again, some of the world is pretty basic. The graphics aren't the best. They're good. But when it comes down to this game, it's on a technical level of all the zombies, of all the action. And yes, we all remember that E3 demo. It looked completely different, I know. But from what I got from a game that I was not expecting to really like at all, I walked out just having such a fun time and really much, by the end of it, loving it. I love Days Gone, and I will support that game and really praise it until it gets a sequel. So come on, Sony, let's greenlight that sequel. Coming in at my number 7, we talked about hard and awesome boss battles early on, but this is one of the ones that really cements itself, and that is Bloodborne. I loved Bloodborne to death. I cannot wait for Demon's Souls on the PS5, but the first game from Software that actually made me like their games. Not a big fan of Dark Souls 1 or 2. I thought they were a little bit clunky and just not mechanically in tune to my provisions, but when it came down to Bloodborne, I gave it another shot and I freaking loved it, you know? It's more faster paced, it's fluid, and I love the mechanics of it. I love the world that they built about it, and the boss battles are absolutely insane. But it's a game that I felt was fair. Like, if you died because you sucked. If you beat the guy, it's because you got better. And that's what I like about their newer games. I feel like From Software has really been able to do this lately, especially when we look at other games that they've created. Especially in this generation, we've seen Dark Souls 3. I adore that game. I thought it was great as well. Bloodborne, again, I love it. It's one of my favorite PlayStation 4 games. And even adding into this as well, let's dive into Sekiro, another game that I'm still going through at the moment, but is probably my favorite thing that From Software has made. But since this is my exclusive list for the PS4, I'm going through on that manner. Bloodborne, again, is just a phenomenal game that keeps you on the edge of your seat, completely surprises you and shocks you, but at the same time is energetic, fast-paced, but really teaches you some hard lessons when you die, and again, makes you want to get better at the game. Coming at my number 6 is going to be Horizon Zero Dawn. God, I cannot wait for the sequel for this. Horizon Zero Dawn is a game I picked up first day and did not touch. I don't know why it was, I just didn't touch it. I wanted to play it, but I was so busy at the time. I finally got locked into the game and put immense time into this. First off, the world, amazing. Second off, the graphics, phenomenal. But third off, it's the characters and the story. And it kind of reminded me of a Game of Thrones with kind of like a modern technology thrown into there. This is just such a cool, unique world that I think Guerrilla Games has really topped their notch off, and I think the sequel is going to be even better than the first. The first just feels like it was the starting point of all of this. The world, the building, the characters, Aloy, everything like that was just phenomenal. But again, I can't wait to see what they do with Horizon Zero Dawn, because I just love the open world. I love this type of thing, and I just want to keep exploring more and more of it. Before we get to my top 5, guys, make sure again to hit that like and subscribe button. This is a great video to be making. I love talking video games. It's one of my hardcore passions. You know, I love talking movies on this channel, but video games, when I get to talk video games, it's excellent. So make sure, guys, to hit that like and subscribe button, as well as share this if you guys love the PS4 or are excited for the PS5 or the Xbox Series X. We're all video game nerds here. For me, I do not believe in the console wars. I think we should all just take it all in and have a blast. We should support for both of them to win. As well, guys, make sure to comment down below again and let me know your guys' favorite exclusives to the PS4. Again, that's what we are doing here, favorite exclusives. Even though these are my top 10 PS4 games, I wanted to exclude the other games that probably could have made this list as well, since they are not exclusives. But without further ado, let's get back into it. Down at my number 5 is going to be Uncharted 4. God, what a fantastic game this was. Now, this is not my favorite Uncharted game. This is my number 2, but I loved Uncharted 4. I think Uncharted 4 was the fantastic conclusion to this story. Neil Druckmann directs this one around, and for me, going into this, I expected a more darker story, and while nonetheless, I don't think it's as dark as it could have been, I think what I got out of here was a fantastic ending and conclusion to one of my favorite gaming characters of all time. Nathan Drake is phenomenal. The first Uncharted took me by storm. I loved it. I had such a fun time with it. The second one was like, oh my god, this is fantastic. And the third one, which is actually my favorite game, brought a new sense of a layer of character to Nathan Drake. And I think the fourth one even adds on top of that a little bit more. I think the game's a little bit too long. That's why it's only at my number 5. But as a character conclusion, as an exploration of this Indiana Jones type guy, but really who's cemented himself to be his own character now in pop culture. I think this is what makes me excited. I love the set pieces in here. I love how everyone kind of just came together in this one in particular when it came to character development, and especially the ending, which I love the ending. It's probably one of my favorite endings to a gaming game this whole entire generation. Uncharted 4 is a must play. My number 4 is going to be Ghost of Tsushima. I did not expect this to hit my list, but it did. And it's funny because, again, this is another open world samurai game, great mechanics, and again, especially as you upgrade, you surely become stronger and stronger with every blow and slash. One of my favorite things about the game is how it makes you feel, how stronger it makes you. I love that all to death. But Ghost of Tsushima, it wasn't necessarily the story that hooked me, because I think the story is pretty good in here. It's the graphics, it's the art style, it's the combat, and it's everything you can do in this world. That's what made me hinged on this, because usually when I beat an open world game, I try to do as much as possible going through, but once I get to the end, I don't really rarely go back through unless I'm really hinged into it and hooked. And Ghost of Tsushima hooked me. I beat that story. I still hop on every day, every here and there, and especially after adding the Legends Online mode, which is another great addition. It's just a fun game to kind of dive back into, have fun, hack and slash, do some samurai stuff, maybe do some ninja stuff too. That should not be the way, because that's the Ghost way. And just, it's touching, it's poetic, it's poignant. I love the Ghost of Tsushima. It's one of the most unique games I've played this whole console generation. And coming in at my number 3 is going to be Spider-Man for the PS4. God, I cannot wait for Miles Morales. What a flipping game this one was. You know, this is my favorite comic book video game of all time. I have one issue when it comes to the bosses. I think they're a little bit repetitive, but still, this is a great interpretation of Peter Parker. We don't need the origin story. Just get us into this world that he's already been established. He is the Spider-Man, and you know, that it really brings about every single thing in this world is one of my favorite things. The way that it touches on mythology and lore and the other villains. You know, you have Scorpion, the Shocker, Kingpin, Doc Ock by the end. There's so much to it, and especially that cliffhanger at the end credit scene. I'm like, I need to know where all that is going. This is something that made me so excited to see where Peter Parker was in his life. The way they brought in Mary Jane, the way that they brought in Miles Morales, the cameo from Stan Lee. This, as a Spider-Man fan, was everything I could want and more. I love the web slinging, I love the action, and I cannot wait to play the remastered version of this game as well as Miles Morales. And coming in at my number 2 is God of War. Wow. So I've always really loved the God of War franchise. I think 1 through 3 are great. But there's something about 4 that the new art direction, the new story direction they were taking in, especially even the new action direction, it was a risk, but it paid off immensely. I think what God of War does this time around is it still influences itself within this world. It still has the excellent action and excellent mechanics within it. But what I think it did with opening it up to more of an open world scenario, kind of going away from the hack and slashers, which I think are kind of a timing of its generation. I think they still work for certain studios, but I think God of War needed to go in a new, fresh direction, especially after God of War Ascension. And that's what this one did. It got more personal with Kratos and Atreus. And I love, or may I say, boy, and I love where it went with the story. Again, I've really tried to stay away a lot from spoilers for all these games, because a lot of people, you know, maybe didn't get a PS4 this generation. Maybe they had an Xbox, and now they get to jump onto the PS5 if they're getting that, or maybe they are getting a PS4 or haven't played some of these games. And I want to leave these kind of revelations open for you to join into. And God of War is one of those. It's such an amazing game. Badass as all hell. Gory and intense, but the ending is so subtle. And again, poignant, just like I said with Ghost of Tsushima. And I love how God of War was able to speak to that. And the next God of War game, God of War Ragnarok, I just cannot wait for. But we're at my number 1 game for this console generation. If you followed my channel for a bit, you know exactly what this is. If you haven't followed my channel for a bit, then you probably don't. Which then, this could be a controversial pick depending on who you are. My number 1 is The Last of Us Part 2. 100%, this is my favorite game of the generation, and in fact, might be even one of my favorite games of all time. You know, the first game's my favorite game of all time, but it goes back and forth. I mean, these two, for me, are so interconnected now that I can't play one without the other. The Last of Us Part 2, I've done like 5 videos on this thing, and I'm ready to do more. I think it's perfect. I think in the way that I've played this game the most out of all these console exclusives is actually a big thing, especially since it's just a story game. There's no online. I've gone through the game 3 times at this point, and I'm planning on going through it at least 2 more times. I want to do the permadeath, so I might die a lot, so I'll have to keep restarting. I also want to do it ungrounded. And for me, the thing about Last of Us Part 2 is just how excellent of a game it is. There's something about this one that speaks about the cycle of violence. And the way that it really brings you in on an emotional level to Ellie's story is excellent. Not everyone loves what they do with Joel. Not everyone loves what they do with the new character Abby. I loved it all. I think it makes sense for everyone's character progression, and especially more looking on a realistic approach. I get it, this game was not for everyone, but this game shocked me, it unnerved me, and it actually made me feel like I was killing someone. Every single person I killed, I felt like I was actually doing it, and at times sickened me. But that's what The Last of Us did. It brought me in with an emotion. It's one of my favorite storytelling things ever. And I think Neil Druckmann killed it. I think he killed this game. I think he did a phenomenal job with it, and it's my favorite game of this console generation. Out of both consoles, it's going to be one of my favorite games of all time. It's the game that absolutely changed me and inspired me to do more creativity type stuff once I graduate college. So The Last of Us Part 2, you won my favorite game of this console generation. Some of you guys might think, oh, this is biased because he's the first one's his favorite. I went into this one very skeptical. Very much so. I didn't know how to feel. I knew the leaks going in. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about this, and I walked out loving it. Played it a second time, loved it even more, especially even the certain sequences that maybe I wasn't the biggest fan of. And then the third time, it even solidified it more. I love this game. I can keep playing it forever. The gameplay, everything around it's perfect. So that is my #1 game from the PS4, guys. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in this. You guys are seriously all the best. I hope you guys do hit that like and subscribe button. Head on over to Uncharted Films on how to see films right. And of course, it's a big thing to you and a big thing to my Patreon supporters, because without you, I wouldn't be able to do this. Look forward to more gaming content, more movie content, more TV content, all coming up in the next couple of days, weeks, months. That's what we do over here on a daily basis. Guys, I can't wait for the PS5, and I'm sure many of you guys are doing the same thing. This next console generation is going to be awesome game. Both consoles are going to be able to play tons of games and give you guys more content like this. So thank you guys again, and of course, until next time, stay classy.